Okay, we are back from our closed session. I'll turn to our council to see if there's any reportable action from closed session.
There were two items that we took back, Mr. Chairman. The first one having to do with La Habra, the second one having to do with Huntington Beach. There are no reportable actions for either matter.
All right, great. I know we lost some members of the audience. I just want to make sure anybody who should still be part of this meeting has a chance to be part of it. Okay. Yeah, sure. I want to make sure everybody that should be part of this has a chance to be part of it there. Yeah, he's right there. And how about Huntington Beach? Are those members still around, or?
Sunny's here.
Okay, great. Okay, so with no reportable action from closed session, that brings us back to our regular agenda item number 5, which is regarding the disposition of the La Habra successor agency property. And I'll bring it back to the board here for discussion or questions.
I have some questions.
All right.
Probably La Habra staff or attorney related to this question. It seems to me on this agenda item and previous agenda items we've had from La Habra, it continues to be troubling because every time we have an historical document, it tends to be fuzzy looking. And I know in this one, some of these historical documents, they get a little bit old, but when it gets to the spreadsheet portion, they're all blurred out. They're really old. And in this case, I think it goes back to this 2.5 million that was on your long-range plan, right? Consistently being talked about in different bodies and discussed. And as kind of a representative of the schools side and a distribution of those dollars, it's been troubling related to the inhibited value of this property. Originally bought for 2.5 million. Now you're uninhibited. Your appraiser says that this might go up to 11.3 million or something like that. I think so. But you have an obligation to provide parking on it continually, and we have bidders here that says, okay, well, we can work with that. We can find a way to make a profit. And if you only value the property at 25 or 50 or 100,000, whatever it might be, there's a thing like, okay, well, we can kind of be a bidder on that kind of thing. But in reality, the city kind of has taken a position that they want to retain the property, that there's value there. And at the same time, we're asking to distribute all these assets out of the successor agency. So I kind of blame the original city and redevelopment agency for inhibiting that property, which now is of great value if you have to continue to do that. And I don't know about the in perpetuity related to putting that restriction on that deed. It's really caused a problem here. And I think that's the crux of the problem and the reason the city or the successor agent has been problem and left this asset to deal with. So I only come back to the city on this question because I believe this body took a spreadsheet before where there was $2.5 million item on there and the decimal point was kind of moved over and obscured and it looked like $25,000. So I'm just questioning, you continue, because that public transparency, you continue to put in front of the leaders or the officials here of how to deal with this, and this transparency between a $2.5 million property or a $25,000 property continues to be a lack of clarity. And I think from agencies that receive funds from the distribution or the sale of this asset, it begins to be unclear about how to retain that true value for those entities and organizations. So I think that's my position. I think for the body up here, I know you guys maybe have some different issues there's obviously a lot of questions about the process here. But my concern is to continue to obscure the visibility and the original restrictions put on the property. And I don't know that I've ever heard anybody really go back that far to really explain why those provisions were put on there to benefit the other property owners in and around this property. But I do recognize that we do have a few bidders of interest in what you put before us today. So maybe that was more of a monologue than a question. I'll leave it up to you.
Does anybody from La Habra care to respond?
Which I tried to put as much as I could in the resolution. It appears the 2.5 million was the amount of the improvements that was made on the property back in 1990 and did not work in La Habra in 2012 when they did the long-range property management plan originally. But for whatever reason, that was the amount that was carried on to the long-range property management plan. And the amount that was carried on to the long-range property management plan, I believe in 2022, when the successor agency wanted to redesignate it from property for sale to governmental use, we used that same amount. At the time, I remember having a conversation with your staff, both Chris and Kathy, and I was honest with them and telling them I didn't honestly know the value because we had not gotten an appraisal as to that date. We were basing it on what was on the long-range property management plan. So in 2023, we did do the appraisal before we started the process to list the property for sale. I think it was while we were waiting for the HCD to give us their final thoughts on the SLA. So that's where I believe the 2.5 million came from. But as of today, the appraised value that we have is the 30,000, and as the appraiser mentioned in that report, a lot of it has to do with the deed restrictions that are on the property, and neither party can just remove those deed restrictions. So that's why the value is reduced to the 30,000. And I believe the deed restrictions came as part of that process after the bond was issued and the grant deed was executed and recorded. That deed restriction then reduced the value of that property in 1990. And I believe that is kind of outlined in the resolution.
So you're saying that the deed restriction cannot be removed by the parties?
Both parties would have to agree, I believe, to remove the deed restriction. And as of right now, both parties are not agreeing to remove the deed restriction.
Mm-hmm. I guess as a follow-up to that, I think, again, I think that value that was put out publicly to leaders, you know, probably, or to the public, alluded to this dynamic to where it seems like the city wanted to hold on to that property, and the question would be why they never made that offer before.
Well, I can't speak for the city. I think as part of our process, I don't know that if we would have come to the oversight board with the 30,000, I think we needed to kind of go through the process to find out what the open market thought the value of the property was, and that's how we landed where we are today.
Okay, thank you.
All right, any other discussion?
Yes, I'd like to ask a
Riora?
question also. When did you become aware of the Martinez's bid?
Just now, I was unaware that there was a fourth bid.
So the city of La Habra did not have any notice or notification or anything of the Martinez's bid until this morning?
Correct. I only received the 3 bids from the broker. I did not receive a 4th bid.
So the broker did not tell you about the bid?
No.
I have a follow-up question. On your appraiser or things, do they have any credentials related to deed restrictions and liabilities related to what the value of those are?
I could probably let the attorney speak to that.
That'd be great, since that was kind of passed off by a council to kind of, it's all the attorneys that did everything.
Yeah, good morning. Seth Merowitz, Best Western Krieger. I don't know anything other than that the appraisers were MAI approved, approved appraisers, MAI licensed appraisers.
Right.
That's what I know about them. So
It's,
that's all I can offer.
yeah, it's a significant liability on the restriction. To me, that seems to be a liability, which we've dealt with liabilities in here as far as debt and other kinds like this. But it being attached to the property, it seems almost that should have been disclosed kind of almost separately or some kind of obligation.
During the process?
I don't know when. No.
But I believe the listing did indicate that there was a deed restriction on the property.
Yes.
I'm not sure when else we would have disclosed that information to any interested parties.
Yeah. Did you ever experience that when you did your long-range plans as far as how that was?
I'm not sure because I didn't work in La Habra when they did the long-range property management plan. The only one that we submitted that I was involved in was really just to reclassify what was on the original long-range property management plan to from for sale to governmental use. So I'm not sure what other processes they might have gone through.
Any other questions?
Yes. Under what authority do you go out for rebid after November 7th, after the final bids were supposed to been submitted?
Mr. Yarborough, members, I think at the bottom line, health and safety 34177E pushes to the successor agency to handle that process. And they're really able under the law to handle the process in any way they choose, right? The law does not specify how the successor agency needs to go through that process, whether it's an open market bid or a broker or, so that really, and the city went down a process, and the city is coming before you today with an appraiser, an appraisal, and a purchase option well above that appraisal in line with 34177E, trying to resolve this matter.
Did the city of La Habra review the bids before coming in with their offer after the final bid of November 7th?
I can't speak to what was discussed
You can't
in
speak
closed
to that?
session. No, I can't speak to what was discussed in closed session. Mr. Yarborough.
Can you speak to that?
No.
So nobody knows how you came in with your bid of $1,000 more than what was seen as the highest bid after the bid process was finished.
Mr. Yarborough, you can question the successor agency process. I just go back to 34177E that puts it to the successor agency to determine their process. You, as the Oversight Board, absolutely have the right to accept or reject that process. No question. I mean, I understand what your authority is, and I completely respect that. But the successor agency followed a process and is before you with an appraiser to show the value based on the restrictions and an offer well above that appraisal. We're looking to conclude this matter, as I think you are.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I may be wrong, but I think I recall that those bids were part of the agenda. Were they not part of the agenda at that meeting when the city voted to come in with their own bid? Weren't they already published?
The December 18th meeting? Yes.
Not the one that we reviewed here, but
That's the meeting,
No.
the public meeting regarding this process.
the meeting before that.
That was a closed session.
That was a close session.
There was November, I think, 20th and December 4th were 2 closed session meetings.
Got it. Okay. Mr. Wheatley seems to suggest that he might have some light to shed on this. Do you want to hear from Mr. Wheatley? Okay, we'll take a pass. We'll take a pass. All right. Any other questions from the board or discussion? Well, then that brings us to the item as it's presented to us. And it seems like our option here would be to accept this as proposed or not.
I move that we reject number 5.
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second to reject the bids as proposed. Item number 5. Any further discussion? All in favor?
For clarification, is that rejecting all the bids, or is that rejecting only the bid of the city of La Habra?
Or rejecting, well, I'll let the maker.
I'm looking to find out what legitimate bids were made during the process before November 7th, during and up to November 7th, which was a public bid. And that's what I'm trying to get to. And so I'm rejecting this because the city came in with their own bids afterwards, probably after they reviewed them, and then went out again after that, and it's just a bunch of chaos afterwards. It doesn't follow any protocols for RFPs that we normally wind up doing in the functions that we have as office holders. And so I'm not interested. I'm really interested in finding out if the bid for the Martinez's was done properly and if it's acceptable, because it came in during the time, and the reason why it wasn't presented to the city is bizarre to me, you know, because it's the highest bid.
All right, well, it's been made clear that nobody in the room knows the answer to that, so I think we'll probably have to, assuming we vote to reject this, we'll probably have to take this up at a later meeting again.
Right, but we have to have a determination as to the legality of the bid up to November 7th, and not the complete chaos that happened afterwards.
Yeah, well, the chair will work with staff to fill in the blanks. We've had a lot of discussion here, so it's pretty clear what some of the things are we'll need to have to move forward. So with a motion and a second on the floor, all in favor of rejecting the bid that's been submitted and proposed by the city of La Habra?
Through their bid?
Their bid.
Yeah.
The one they're presenting to us to accept. That's the motion, to reject that bid. Correct? That's the only thing before us.
Their offer?
Yes?
Okay, I'm rejecting their offer for sure.
Am I wording that correctly, Mr. Babko?
I think what you're trying to do is reject what was presented to you today by La Habra,
Yes,
and then continue this matter until a later date.
yes.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Is that okay with the second?
Mm-hmm.
Second.
Yes.
All right, great. So all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries unanimously. We will hear this again at a later meeting. Moving on to items 7 and 8, which we're taking together for Huntington Beach. There's a resolution regarding the establishment of the successor agency enforceable obligation, and ROPS, and providing direction to the State Department of Finance is the suggestion on item 7. And 8 would be approving the ROPS administrative budget, subject to the resolution in item 7. That's what's being proposed.
I'll move to approve.
All right.
Second.
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 A motion and a second. Is there further discussion? Seeing none, we take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That carries unanimously. Brings us to the end of our scheduled agenda. We've had public comment and exhausted all the items on our agenda. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is January 23rd at 8:30. So we thank you all for being here. And I'm sure we'll see some of you again. Have a great day. We're adjourned.